Every human being lives within two realities, the outer world, and the one that exists silently inside the mind. Carl Jung believed that our true struggle is not against society or circumstance, but against the divided nature of our own psyche. According to Jung, every person carries within them two essential forces, the ego and the shadow. The ego represents the conscious self, the part that identifies with our thoughts, beliefs, and identity. The shadow, on the other hand, contains everything the ego rejects: our fears, instincts, suppressed emotions, and unaccepted desires. The more we deny our shadow, the stronger it becomes, quietly influencing our actions, relationships, and decisions. Jung argued that most human suffering arises from this inner disconnection. We try to be good, moral, or successful while unconsciously acting out the very traits we condemn. The result is internal conflict, a constant tension between who we are and who we pretend to be. Jung's lifelong work centered around resolving this conflict through a process he called individuation, the integration of the conscious and unconscious mind into a unified whole. This path is not about perfection, but wholeness, accepting every part of ourselves, both light and dark. True psychological growth, Jung believed, comes not from avoiding the shadow, but from confronting and understanding it. Only then can the individual transcend self-deception and live with genuine awareness, strength, and peace. The ego is the center of our conscious identity, the I that says, "This is who I am." It organizes our thoughts, experiences, and decisions, giving structure to our existence. Jung described the ego as the gatekeeper of awareness, filtering what becomes conscious and what is pushed into the unconscious. Without the ego, life would feel chaotic and disoriented, but when the ego becomes over, it traps us in a limited version of reality. From childhood, the ego begins shaping itself through interactions with family, culture, and society. We learn what is acceptable and what is not. Over time, these values become the boundaries of our identity. The problem arises when the ego mistakes these boundaries for the entire self. It begins to reject anything that contradicts its image: fear, aggression, envy, weakness, pushing them into the unconscious. Jung believed this repression is inevitable, but dangerous, because it creates the illusion of control. An inflated ego seeks validation, superiority, uncertainty, while a weak ego collapses under external pressure. Both are unbalanced. Jung saw the healthy ego flexible, strong enough to maintain individuality, yet humble enough to acknowledge the vast unknown within. A mature ego accepts that it is not the totality of the psyche, but merely a part of a much larger system. An inflated ego seeks validation, superiority, and certainty, while a weak ego collapses under external pressure. Both are unbalanced. Jung saw the healthy ego as flexible, strong enough to maintain individuality, yet humble enough to acknowledge the vast unknown within. A mature ego accepts that it is not the totality of the psyche, but merely a part of a much larger system. The shadow is the counterpart of the ego, the hidden container of everything we deny, fear, or suppress. It includes both primitive instincts and unrealized potentials. Jung observed that people often project their shadow onto others. The qualities we hate most in others are often reflections of what we have refused to see in ourselves. The shadow is not inherently evil, it is simply the unacknowledged. Within it lies not only darkness, but also creativity, passion, and raw life energy. The danger arises when we refuse to face it. Suppressed shadow. Material leaks out in distorted forms. Sudden anger, envy, hypocrisy, or destructive habits. Jung famously said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." To integrate the shadow is to reclaim our lost wholeness, that it requires brutal honesty to see in ourselves the same flaws we condemn in others. When we bring these aspects to light, they lose their destructive power and transform into sources of strength. Shadow integration is not a one-time event, but a lifelong dialogue between awareness and instinct. It teaches humility, compassion, and realism. By owning our darkness, we stop projecting it outward and begin to live more consciously. The shadow is the mirror of truth. It shows us not who we wish to be, but who we truly are. Individuation is the cornerstone of Jung's psychology, the process through which a person becomes an integrated, authentic individual. It is not self-improvement or moral perfection, it is self-realization. The path begins when one recognizes that the ego is not the whole personality. The psyche contains deeper layers, the personal unconscious, the shadow, and the collective unconscious, all interacting within a unified whole. Individuation demands confrontation with the unconscious. Dreams, symbols, and life crises often serve as messengers from the depths, guiding us toward balance. Jung saw this as a natural process of psychological evolution where each conflict or challenge becomes an opportunity for integration. When we accept our contradictions, reason and emotion, strength and vulnerability, we move closer to inner harmony. The goal of individuation is not to eliminate tension, but to live consciously within it. Jung compared it to the alchemical process of turning lead into gold. The raw material of our experiences, when confronted and refined, becomes wisdom. This journey often feels isolating, as it requires stepping outside collective norms and facing truths that others avoid. Yet the reward is profound freedom. The individuated person acts from inner conviction, not from societal conditioning, that they no longer seek validation or control, but understanding. Such individuals, Jung believed, become the creative force behind cultural renewal, people whose inner order brings clarity to a chaotic world. Beyond the personal unconscious lies a deeper layer shared by all humanity, the collective unconscious. Jung proposed that beneath our individual experiences exists a vast reservoir of inherited patterns and symbols known as archetypes. These archetypes shape the way we think, dream, and behave. The mother, the hero, the shadow, the wise old man. Such figures appear in myths, religions, and dreams across every culture, revealing a universal structure of the psyche. The collective unconscious is like a psychic DNA, a blueprint for human experience. It influences our imagination, our moral values, and even our fears. Jung's insight was that these patterns are not merely cultural but instinctual, expressing themselves through images and stories that guide human development. When we encounter an archetype, we feel its emotional power. Myths of heroes facing dragons mirror our own struggles with fear and transformation. The archetype of the self, at the center of this system, represents the ideal state of wholeness toward which the psyche naturally strives. Understanding archetypes helps us interpret our inner experiences. Instead of viewing dreams or emotions as random, Jung taught that they are symbolic messages from the unconscious. By studying them, we begin to see our lives not as isolated events, but as part of a universal human story. This awareness deepens meaning and connects us to the collective wisdom of humanity. The final stage of Jungian growth is the reconciliation of opposites, the conscious acceptance of both light and darkness. Jung believed that psychological maturity comes when a person learns to hold these polarities without denying either side. Good and evil, order and chaos, reason and instinct, all are part of the human whole. Reconciliation begins with self-knowledge. As we integrate the shadow, the ego expands its awareness, and the self, the totality of the psyche, emerges as a guiding center. This unity does not erase conflict. It transforms it into creative energy. The individual who accepts their inner contradictions becomes more authentic, compassionate, and resilient. Jung warned that those who identify only with light become dangerously naive, while those who are consumed by darkness lose balance. True wisdom lies in integration, the recognition that both forces serve the evolution of consciousness. In practical terms, reconciliation manifests as greater self-control, emotional balance, and purpose. One no longer reacts blindly to life, but responds with understanding, The inner war subsides, replaced by harmony between mind, instinct, and spirit. This is the essence of Jung's message. We do not conquer the darkness by denying it, we transcend it by embracing it. Only through this integration can the human being achieve wholeness, freedom, and the quiet strength of an awakened soul.